This is tape 23 of the Strega series, and we basically are at the point where the plane is in one piece all together. We've even done a preliminary weight on it. We're ready to do some of the basic trim. Got the gear legs on. Ready to start working on the vertical CG. We have various muffler options we can play with, try, start with, whatever. And it's going to be an interesting time, I hope. But the first thing I want to do is I want to get all my props ready for the upcoming season. On the last video I organized my toolbox, got the van ready, painted the van, and put a new rug in it, trying to squeeze one more year out of that sucker. And right now I want to get all my equipment ready. We hope that we're coming up on some nice weather and some time that we can hopefully get some flights. Now, because we know the model is going to be relatively light, what I wanted to do is I want to get all of the props that I want to use in the upcoming season. We really do have some weather to work on them now. But basically build on the knowledge I gained last year. Last year the information was we had one set of props that was basically the 14.5 rev-ups cut to about 13 or 12 3/4 or even down to 12 1/2. And they worked real well under very windy conditions. We also had the AHMs. They worked good under some conditions, not so well under other conditions. And we also used a few toward the end of the season, 13.6 rev-ups, which really have a true pitch of 5. And we did some experimenting on Jimmy's plane and on mine that was very successful. So what I've tried to do, and it's, I don't even have an answer for you here, we found out that there aren't any more rev-up props available. So my suggestion is, number one, if you go to a store out of the area and you think there's a chance there might be some rev-ups 11.5/6, 13.6, and 14.5, buy every one and stockpile them, because I don't know the reason, but they're not obtainable from the normal distributors or from SIG. So the number one thing right now is I'm going to go dig through my collection of props, even used props, props with paint on, props that are chipped and nicked and whatever, and try to make up a selection of props for the upcoming season. And I want to fancy them up, put a little, you know, as I always do, paint them to match the plane in some way fancy. But basically I want to work with those three props, the 14.5 rev-ups in various diameters, and those seem to be the best under windy conditions. 13.6 rev-ups, which seem to be a real good prop for Edison, circle burners, air where the air is terrible, and the 13.4s, which work real good on the runway. They seem to be a good prop that doesn't have a lot of bite, but it's got real nice characteristics as far as not whipping up and being able to handle runway air. So with all that in mind, we also have just what we're trying to look forward to this time of year. We have Tom Lay's new muffler ready to for a test, and there's only one test, and it's not to read a magazine, it's to get out to the field and get oily. We have that to experiment with. We also have that big can muffler that Nelson is making. Ran that on a bench already, and that was a real nice sounding deep throaty muffler. And of course we can always go back to the old reliable tongues, or if absolutely everything else fails, you know, we have 2 Merkle mufflers left. So with all that in mind, I think we'll go get some props and get dirty. Well, as always seems to happen, we have a problem over at our 2-family house that needs our immediate attention, so we're not going to be able to work on this anymore today. I'll just have to pick up tomorrow morning. Just an ordinary, common, everyday delay here, but hey, I'm really psyched. It's almost flyable out there right now. Better tell these tenants to take a hike. Now the first thing I want to do this morning, I want to make up these little, well, let's call them hubcaps for lack of a better word. See, I don't like that you can see the axle through there. What I'd like this to look like is old banner wheels, the old ones like Jim Silhavy used to have, where you nice and neat and clean looking. I just don't like seeing the axle. So one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to make up some little, well, I'm going to try to make them anyway. We don't know if this is really going to work. Some little plywood hubcaps that have a little bit of a curvature to them that I can put over that and make it look like banner wheels. Now the reason we don't, you're probably saying, well, why don't you just use banner wheels? You can't buy them anymore, number one. Number two, when you could buy them, they were about 10 ounces. They were really heavy, so lose that idea. That's step one. I'm taking out an old hub, and this is Dave Brown wheels, by the way, have two size hubs. This is the larger of the two. Now what we have on the plane is the smaller of the two, so this is about a 1/16 inch bigger in diameter, which will let us cover the lip with the wood. So the first thing I want to do is get a nice flat sanded on this. Now I took a scrap of 1/8 inch plywood. This is 5-ply plywood, by the way, not light ply. Just press that in position. Let that kick off. We'll have that glued right to the piece of plywood. Then we'll take it over to the jigsaw and trim the outer edge as close as we can. Now, no matter how careful you are at cutting this, you'll always get some little rough spots, so what I'll do off camera, I'll just dress these off with a sanding block. Now, you can't just chuck this right in the drill press with big ripples in it, so I'm just trying to knock down all the high spots by eye. Again, I'm using a hub for a pattern. And again, I'm kind of inventing this as I go along, so if it seems like, you know, I'm not moving along fast enough, you'll understand why. I'd like these to be just like little hubcaps. Again, I don't like the way the Dave Brown wheels look. They really look cheesy as far as I'm concerned. And all the other choices in wheels have something against them. And I just want to mention on a tape, years ago, I mentioned to Gerald Champ that I was building that Nobler, and I really wanted some banner wheels, and he sent me a couple of sets of banner wheels, but since those years, that was back in '87, they're out of here. Okay, now this is ready to chuck in a lathe, and then I'm going to dress this off to where it's a little like a half-moon hubcap. Of course, you can just take this piece, chuck it right into a drill press. Don't over-tighten it because it's only plywood. Want to pay particular attention to is the edge. If you don't get a nice radius on the edge, the paint will peel off like saran wrap somewhere in the life of the plane. You want to dress that edge off very carefully. Pay particular attention, try to get a nice edge. Now, because this is 5-ply plywood, it sands. This is really beautiful the way it sands. We'll probably only need 1 coat, 2 coats of CA on here, and we can go right ahead and paint it. Again, you can look at the shape of the circles, and it gives you an idea of just how much of a radius you can get in here. Now, what I like to do is the last sanding I like to do with some 400 wet and dry paper dry. Plywood sands, this plywood anyway, sands beautifully before I hit this with CA or do anything. Now obviously I'm going to have to pull a wheel hub off. I'll take a razor blade and just slice the wheel hub. But again, I want to pay real good attention to that radius. I mean, you better be real careful doing this, just like taking a top block off. You really don't want to, I don't want to screw this up after all the sanding.
You know, this looks a little bit like a doorknob. You know, the knob pulls that you put on dresser drawers. Okay, got it off in one piece. Yeah, obviously you can save that hub for maybe making another set. Scrape all the stuff off the back. Next step is I have to get in here with a Dremel tool and grind out a little bit of a dish this out so that that soldered washer doesn't rub on this. I don't want any binding, of course. Now, of course, I want to get this surface really nice and flat because it's going to make a glue joint contact with the wheel itself. And you can see I have that dished out, and it doesn't have to have a nice finish, but of course I'm feeling for it. I don't want to get this paper thin either. I got the edge roll dressed off nice. I know one of the things probably somebody out there is thinking is, boy, this is a lot of work for just something that you're almost not going to ever see. Well, you know, there's a saying that I like to remember in regards, and I apply it to regards to model airplanes, is there's some kind of a poem, and of course I'm not an educated person, so I don't know exactly what the poem is, but the closing line of the poem is, "The gods see everywhere." And if anybody has a copy of that poem, hey, if you have an education, send it to me. You know, I spent my life in a ghetto, you know, sucking up to $50 cars and stuff. Anyway, the gods see everywhere, and I like to think that all the little detail work that I put on a plane that almost nobody will see, I know Ski Dombrowski will see it. I know the people that are real craftsmen in this event. I know Ted Fancher will see it, and I know Mike Rogers will see it, and whatever, you know, the list goes on. I'm not trying to leave anybody out here, but little details like this, they seem to be the thing that make or break the front row planes or the concourse winner, and needless to say, when you put all this work in, you'd like to have a shot at winning. The next step is I just took a piece of scrap balsa and just glued it to the inside here with some thick CA. Now I can work this surface, and I have a way of confining it and a way of putting a finish on. So the first trick obviously is get some thin CA, wipe it with a paper towel, and then we'll get this sanded down. The thing you want to make sure you don't forget is to seal the edge and seal this back in here, just so if a little oil gets in there, the plywood doesn't start to delaminate. Q-tips or paper towel, just wipe it right down. And you'll feel it start, there it goes. Just feel it start to kick. That's ready to sand. There, you can touch it. And the nicest way to get this sanded real quick is with 400. Usually 2 coats will do it. Get the edges real nice. Now, one of the things I'm going to do next, I'm just brushing on some of the yellow that matches the plane. I'm going to mix up some 380S acrylic clear. Now, the advantage of 380S, we're going to do props later today. I'm going to get out my prop collection and try to get some props painted up. And we'll be getting into that later today. But what the advantage of the 380S is you can spray a coat on and 15 minutes later buff it out. If I did this with dope, I'd have to buff it out tomorrow. It'll buy me a day of having to work on this. And you can tell I'm getting itchy to fly this plane. In fact, I've been itchy for the last week or so. I know everybody knows what I'm talking about. Okay, so all I'll do now is make the other hub up, do exactly the same thing, let this dry for a while. And then while I'm spraying the 380S, and 380S is what you want to spray on props, not clear dope. While I'm spraying on the 380S, I can hit this with a couple of coats, and maybe this afternoon or tomorrow at least, get these on. And if we don't like them, of course, I can pull them off and throw them away. That's the nice part. That's another nice thing about having a plane. Now, this plane has come out lighter than I thought it would. Right now it's under 60 ounces, even with anticipating we're going to need some trim weight when Mike gets here to trim it. But what's nice is now if I add the little details like the hubcaps and things, it isn't like all of a sudden it's 70 ounces and all you can do is hope that you can make it lighter and lighter. If we add a couple of accessories to this, it's not going to be the end of the world. And I know once the weather really heats up, like it did in Lubbock, you just can't make the plane light enough when that real summer heat comes. Now, another good use you have for that vise that we bought at the $5 vise is hold them completely flat. This way you won't get any runs or drips. I'll give that a half hour to dry, put a second and third coat of yellow till it's nice and bright yellow, and it'll be ready to spray by this afternoon. In the meantime, we have other little things we want to work on here. Now, one of the things that's real handy, is that see how the landing gear spread just matches my bar top counter over there. But what I'm going to do is take some 1/4-inch wood and put holes in the middle of it so that the wheels can drop down. And I'll be honest with you, what I've seen happen already is somebody will walk by and just hit the wingtip, and of course later this afternoon we'll have some other people here, and asses and elbows all get in the way. So it's a good thing to have, even if you leave it on your work table. It's a nice little thing. I call them little wheel chocks. It only takes a minute or so to make them, and real handy, and they may save the plane. Who knows? Now what I have some 1/4-inch scrap here, and this, believe it or not, is something on one of the Monday night sessions. Somebody wanted a fiberglass demo, and I did it on this piece of wood, and I saved the wood. So this wood now will make a decent set of wheel chocks, and it's got glass cloth on it, so you think maybe it'll even look like a precision thing, even though this is just a little safety thing. Hey, by the way, and for anybody that doesn't know, John DeTavio had a Falcon at one time, a brand new Falcon, all buffed out and everything, sitting on a kitchen table. Somebody walked into the house, and you know what happened, rolled off the table and broke in half. This is a good safety thing. Now I'm taking that sandpaper that Jimmy brought, and what that does, it gives the footprint that either is going to go down onto the counter or onto the floor or onto wherever. It gives it a footprint. There's my scissors. I have these all over the van, but these are handy to have in the shop too. And what I did, I just roughly estimated the shape that the wheel would go in there, cut out a little notch, and then get in there with the Dremel sanding drum, go around the edge, and I'll just make a mirror image of it up. This way you're cutting the sandpaper and the wood out at the same time. Then the last little bit I'll just take out with the sanding drum, and I'll have a nice matched set of chocks. Now I just want to check to see if you make these. I made these a little oversized. The reason these may be not the wheels that we wind up using on a plane. I want them to be plenty big, and because this sandpaper is on the bottom, you get a good grip. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we have ourselves. Now I'll just mark these up with the P-Touch label. What chip this is for? We know this fits this plane. Because what happens is some of them that have wheel pants, you don't want to use them on the wrong plane, and the wheel pants will be hitting here and scratching itself up. That makes a nice little addition to the shop, and we have it sitting on a table here. You can see what happens, it doesn't have a tendency to roll off the table. Now, anybody doesn't know, this is my stepson Craig. Look at the camera. You're going to college today again. What did you forget the last time you went to college? The last time you went, what did you forget?
Was it underwear?
Yeah.
Admit it. He's not going to forget his underwear today when he goes.
Okay, really.
Forget his underwear. Take a look at this cute face. Now, this is my boy here. Look, he's wearing his pro stunt shirt. What a guy. He went to college last time, totally forgot his underwear. He had to wear one pair of underwear. And he finally talked the girls in his dorm into loaning him some underwear. Is that the truth?
Well, it kind of worked out.
All right, that was fun. That's a true story, by the way. This is a serious part of the video. You know, we try to have a lot of fun with the videos, try to show some good tips, but there's some times that what happens is you have to be absolutely dead serious. There's no time for laughter here. I want to explain something that maybe a lot of people, even my best friends, find hard to understand or they don't have a real grip on, and that's propellers. A lot of people come by my shop or they come to the van and they look and they see this giant bag of propellers and they say, "Why do you need all those propellers for? Why is it one gun?" Or they say, "I read in the magazine you only need one propeller for all conditions." Well, regardless of what anybody tells you or regardless of whatever the other technology in the world may be, I'm only giving away my technology, and my technology is one of the biggest advantages you have running a 60 or even a Tiger 46 is you can run a variety of props. That motor is so powerful and so flexible, you can run pretty much anything from 11 and a half, 11 and a quarter, and I've seen Jimmy run 11 and a quarter 3 blades up to almost a full 14-inch. It's got tremendous flexibility. And what you want to do is you want to take advantage of that. And to take advantage of that, the one tool that you need in your toolbox is a variety of propellers, which obviously we have here. Now what I've done, because I do a lot more flying, let's say, than an average person that only gets to fly in a weekend, I try to gather as much data as I can. I mark each prop. And just as a quick example, this is the props we made on camera last year at the end of the year. These props have hundreds, maybe thousands of flights on them by now. Not only on my plane, but on Jose Modesto's, on Mike Rogers', on Joe Adamusco's, on Jimmy's plane. These props have been, let's put it this way, they've been around. They're like whores. They've been around. Now what I'm trying to get is, I'm trying to build each year on what I learned the year before. At the end of last year, I came to one conclusion. I had these props molded up by Brian Ether. This is the solid carbon fiber 14.6 rev-up replica. I did some extensive testing with that one. I had the big Bali, which is a 13.5, de-pitched a little bit. Did extensive testing with that one. I had the hollow, the one that Brian Ether sells that's hollow. Jose Modesto, I think, still has that. Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll even get it back this year. And I also had the prop that Brian Ether sells, the 12.5/6. All those props had a place somewhere in my artillery, but the prop that seemed to, this is another carbon one, the props that seemed to work the best, and this is decision one, is I had the best luck with the wood props. Now, Big Jim has told me over and over and again, and it's hard to make a case against it, that the prop has to be as light as possible. Well, he's absolutely right, and I found that to be true. The wood props, this whole box of props here costs less than one carbon prop. So what I'm saying is, having a variety of props, of the wood props, and I have this one as an example. This one worked real good at Edison. Okay, and I used it at the Nats on Top 20 Day. I wrote on the hub. This one was a little bit fast. I had too much pitch cut in that one for my needs. This one had very good wind-up and was good in the hot air, and it worked well on the Red Baron. Another good prop. So what I'm trying to do, this is the one I used on Friday at the Nationals. I had the undercambered one. Where's that undercambered one? That was in here too. Undercambered one, never really was too happy with it, was kind of on the wimpy side, but I'll keep it anyway. Some of the props I can totally disregard. The 12.5 Zinger never worked out on Tsunami. I had a couple of 12.5 Zingers, never really had any real anything to report that was worth having. The 13.4s, all of the 13.4s, They worked well, but they were kind of on the weak side. And I'll make up a couple of them anyway. But the best luck I had was with the 14.5s. The 14.5 rev up cut to 13 inches, cut to 12 3/4, and cut to 12 1/2. Those three props, you're talking less than $15, they will cover you under almost every condition imaginable. I also like the 13.6 rev up, and I'll cut one. I'll leave it stock, of course, at 13, 112 3/4, and 112 1/2. Those 6 props will probably cover me under every possible condition, I hope. But, just to play it safe, I'm going to take the 4 or 5 best props that I had from last year and use these for building blocks. I'll get these refinished. The couple that never worked out, this one had too much pitch cut out of it, and I can sort right through it. The ones that I had the 4 pitch with additional pitch cut into them, these worked well, so I might want to keep 1 or 2 of these. This one was one that I had D-pitched, a 14.5 I D-pitched. I might want to keep this if I have to fly on a really cool day, or probably at the Massachusetts contest. Craig will get the phone, I hope. How can President Nixon call me now? Unbelievable. Okay, but the idea here is I'm going to select the best props from last year and get them all set and make a few new ones. Now, one of the things, and I try to say this without sounding conceited or anything, one of the things, I had a phone call the other day and somebody was very adamant about telling me, oh, you're full of shit, you don't share all your secrets, you always keep some secrets for yourself like stock car racers or motorcycle racers. Well, that's not exactly true. Is that for me, Craig?
Yeah.
Okay. Back in a moment. President Nixon's on the phone. Sorry for the interruption. President Nixon needed to know about props. But, you know, going to get back to my original thing, and I was thinking about this morning. One of the things, you know, I was fortunate enough, lucky enough is the right word, to win all the contests last year, the local contests, and do relatively well at the Nats, even considering how wacky the Nats was. But one of the things that made that possible, and a lot of people overlook it, an awful lot of people don't realize just how big of a part propellers play in dialing your plane in. And if you don't know which is the better of 2 props, well, this is something you're only going to learn as time goes by. But having a good baseline to start with, and I could probably do that over the phone if or Big Jim could, or any person could get you on the right track. You don't want to start off, as an example, with a 72-ounce plane and 11 1/4 inch prop. When you have a plane that's more than 70 ounces, it's almost always going to fly best on a full 13-inch prop. Now, these planes, Tsunami and Strega, are lighter than that. Sometimes you can steal some diameter, get them down to 12 3/4, 12 1/2, and still get away with it. But I can guarantee you one thing. When you go to certain fields, like the Circle Burner Field, or Edison, or Middlesex, those 3 in particular, and where that air is turbulent, there is absolutely no choice other than maximum diameter. Maximum diameter. I think this is one of the things the guys that were on the USA team might have missed the boat on. They practice in stun heaven air. You go to China, it's not stun heaven. It might have been like Edison. Well, you got to know which prop to put on the plane. And the only way you know is by doing a lot of testing and having a lot of props. You can't have 1 or 2 or 3 props. And when I looked in Ted Fancher's toolbox, it must have had 500 propellers in there. And that's the right way to do it. That's the perfect way to do it. And one of the things, and I'll give Ted the full credit for it, as soon as he found something that worked on his plane, because David was flying the same plane, basically he did 2 tests at once. If it worked for him, it probably worked for David. Well, we try to do that with the Pattern Master program. If I find a prop that works well, I pass it on to Mike or to Jose or Lampione or whoever, and vice versa. You know, that's the whole idea, is to save that every person on the planet doesn't have to test every propeller. And I can narrow it down for you probably that 3/4 of the props in the world you don't have to test. I've never had luck with any of those PowerPoint props. They never make it to the 3rd or 4th flight, and they're in the garbage or given away. I never have a real lot of luck, at least with 60s, with multiple blade props. It just seems like the 60 likes to turn a big diameter 2-bladed prop. 60 seems to like to turn wood props a lot better than carbon too. So what I'm saying, I'm going to narrow this down. Again,
don't want to make this an all-day affair, but if you want maximum performance, you got to have more than one propeller. And you have to do some testing and make some notes and put them, if you don't have a good memory, and I have no memory, if you don't have a good memory, make a notebook in your toolbox. At Edison, at Circle Burners, at Middlesex. Maximum diameter. No fooling around. You're not going to get away with something. Under turbulent conditions, there's no such thing as whip up. You just have to bore through. Runway air, Nationals air, usually you can get away with little diameter props. I think that's one of the reasons tune pipe planes seem to do better on runway air than they do in turbulence. I've never seen a tune pipe plane, even my own, the best of my own planes, that wanted to fly in turbulent air, because in turbulent air you need maximum diameter, and 60s turn maximum diameter better than pipe planes. On runway air, where conditions are a little wimpier, it seems like you can get away with more. You can get away with multiple blade props, you can get away with maybe less diameter or whatever, but for all our purposes, if you only learn one thing off of this video and you're going to use a Super Tiger engine, make those 3 props up in each set, and you will have less than $30 invested. Paint them all to match your plane. I think that adds a nice little touch. And you'll have a real good head start every time you go to a field. You'll have an idea marked down. This worked at the Circle Burners. This worked at Edison. This didn't work anywhere. Whoop, that didn't work. Get rid of it. This one did this. And you notice people that only have one propeller usually don't win a lot of contests. They win some, but they win when that propeller is working, because the difference between the top expert flyers, either at a national or at one of our local contests, a lot of times it just boils down to the propeller. So if you can pick that up off the video, I'm going to start refinishing some props, and this little dissertation is dead serious. You don't have to spend $1,000 on carbon props to have a good selection. You don't really even have to spend a lot on wood props, but if you start with the ones you know are going to work, you're going to be way ahead of the game, and you use as a foundation for what you're going to do the testing that I've already done, the thousands of flights I've already done. When Joe Adamusco and I go flying, I look at the conditions at Middlesex. Here's the prop, Joe. Put it on a plane. And I save him the first 10 flights of the day. I mean, that's what I try to do. Jose Modesto wants to borrow a prop. Jose, check it out. That'll probably work. Well, we just saved 20 flights just by having those extra props in a toolbox. And the second point is, whether anybody tells you or not, it's a lot of bullshit about keeping secrets. There are no secrets. If you need to keep secrets, you don't deserve to win. Period. End of discussion. I don't want to hear the other point. I want to make it that everybody has a beautiful plane, everybody has a motor that runs well, everybody has whatever finish I can help them with. And then we all go out to the field on a level playing field with people judging that are impartial and have a contest. And that's exciting and that's fun. And when it's anything but that, when it's not a level playing field, or you have somebody's best friend judging, or you have some crazy thing going on, it isn't a contest, and second of all, it isn't fun. And that's the truth. And it's serious. Now, if you're going to mix up, if you're going to make props and wheel hubs and everything, you want to use 380S. This is the material of choice for putting the clear on. The big advantage of this is, I'll try to get that can on the camera. Big advantage of this material, you can buff it out the same day. You can buff it out a half hour later. You sure don't want to forget the flex all. And again, I just put a random amount in there. Since we're going to be doing props, a little bit of fisheye killer, 1 drop of fisheye killer, all you need, and the rest 3608S, and unless it's raining out there, that'll be fine. Props, wheel hubs, anything you do with this, it's a nice time saving, and we'll probably need more thinner than that, but that's a good base mix. A good way to tell when you have exactly the right amount of thinner or close to the right amount of thinner is look for that foam on the top. No foam, it's probably a little thick. I don't know if you can see that. Well, we're going to have to thin it out a little bit for sure when we put it on. So what I'll do is I'll put most of this in here and just add a little thinner. Just to the point where you see foam like it's beer. That's a good starting point. And needless to say, if it's if it's one of those days outside and it looks like it's still lousy outside, if it's kind of humid, you may have to add a little retarder. Now the only thing to be careful of is when you buy, if you buy this acrylic lacquer, make sure you don't get acrylic enamel by mistake. This is critical. Even though there's many brands, Inmont, DuPont, Ditzler, all make clear acrylic lacquer. Lacquer is the magic word. Nothing that says enamel anywhere or polyurethane. You know, look at how nice the shine is on that. Maybe 2 or 3 coats is all I need too, and I can, by this afternoon or tomorrow, be buffing this out. Now while that first coat is drying, we can go over and work on our props for a little while. Now the first thing I want to do is the props that are brand new, and I have some of these that are brand new, some already have finish on them. Take good old acetone and a paper towel. Whoop. Now you could make a little tank if you wanted to and soak these in acetone. That's one good way to do it. That's kind of a, you know, your overkill way. Just get some acetone on there, let it soak for a few minutes. You want to start by getting all the finish off the props. That's step 1, work with a wood prop. Then we want to balance the props, the wood part of the props. That's step 2. Again, this softens it up, then you can go by and just wipe it down. Oh, I had a neat thing here. It was a thing for wetting wallpaper down, like a little tank. Somebody borrowed it. Won't mention any names, but now I don't have it. I used to pour the acetone in there and just soak the prop. You could also put it in a gallon jar if you want to, but then all the junk sinks down to the bottom of the acetone and you have to strain it. This is certainly a good enough way. This works on rev-up props. It doesn't work on some props that have a different finish. You can see that the finish is coming right off. It's just a matter of time. You can smell it when the finish is starting to loosen. There it goes. Starting to loosen up. And you don't have to be too concerned with the hub at this time. There's one disappearing. As we speak, disappearing. And just get all the props that we're going to be working on down to bare wood. And I'll try to get these 4 done. I'm really hoping this afternoon, it's nice and warm out there. I'd really like to go out and run that muffler on Tradition, that Tom Lay muffler, get a run on that, and before I spend a lot of time polishing it and everything. See if it needs any modifications, changes, or whatever to suit my needs. Looks like a real nice unit though. Okay, that's down to raw wood for all purposes. A little bit of sanding and that'll be fine. Now this is a good tip. This sticky back paper, it sticks right to your hand. This is 220 grit. And of course this gets off the last little bit of finish. I want to get down to bare wood if there's any little spots I've missed. I want to radius all the edges off nicely so I don't have the paint peeling up like saran wrap. And then the last step is I'll balance each prop by sanding the back face. I want to get each one balanced real carefully before I go on to any other step. Now this is my gauge for determining the diameter, and of course I want to cut these down to various diameters, and I have them marked on these little lines. Another way to do this is just use 1/8 inch tape and cut off the 1/8 inch tape, and then we'll finalize it up. I like to grind, if it's less than 1/4 inch, I like to grind it off with a grinder. And of course the big ones, we want to take a good 1/2 inch off of these before we even start. And so these, maybe we'll jigsaw part of this off and then finalize it on the grinder. Now I can measure and make sure I haven't taken too much off. I want to wind up with 13 and 12 3/4. Okay. And what I do is I have the gauge right here, and what I want to do now, I'm going to take the final little bit off on a fine grindstone, and then I line up the edge until I have them both equal. Now I want to just put a little bit of a radius in the corners of the trim blades. Maybe an 1/8 inch radius the most. Just to clean up the airflow at the tips. Nothing special here. Any tip shape other than square is going to be less efficient. At least my findings are these power tip props and rake tip props. All that stuff is just nonsense. This is the strongest pulling of the props, is when the blades are dead square at the end. And I'll do the rest of these, and then of course, well, I might as well do one. Just check that I have the diameter I originally started out that I wanted, exactly 12.5, and then each prop individually check that I haven't altered the balance by chopping off the last little bit. Sometimes you do alter the balance just a little bit, and each prop will be ready for paint. Sucker is ready to paint. Here's one of the nice things about the acrylic. Here it is, it's an hour or so after we sprayed it. You can wet sand it out, and see, I'm going down into the yellow, so what I'll do, I'll give this another coat of clear while I'm out there. But there's no real waiting. Now we got a really nice, this turned into a beautiful day. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try to get up to the field this afternoon and check that Tom Lay muffler out. If I get anybody to show up at the field, it'll be nice and I can get some video done. This is really the second coat of acrylic. You can see how nice it is. I'll give this a third and a fourth coat later on today. In fact, the way it is out here, I'll just let it dry outside. I don't even have to put this in the house. Now I'm shooting these with acrylic white. As always, it covers in one coat, it's not a problem. And then I'm going to do some fancy trim on them. I like to make some of the props a little different than the other ones. This way it's easy to identify which ones work and don't work. They're not all exactly the same, appearance-wise. And it's such a nice day out here, I'll just let it dry outside. Well, it doesn't get a whole lot nicer. I can't wait to get up and check that muffler out. With the temperature like it is now, the paint will be dry in 5 minutes. We'll be ready to, well, we're going to go flying this afternoon. It's just too nice of a day to waste. Sorry I didn't get started earlier. One of the first flying days of the year. Now, if I could only get somebody to come up the field and shoot video while I'm testing that muffler, we will give it a shot. And believe me, there's no substitute for just testing this stuff. Don't take anybody's word for it. Don't even take my word for it. Test it. Everybody that thinks they're an expert about mufflers and motors and heads and compression, there's no substitute for just trying it yourself. Put it on your plane, fly it under your conditions, and see how it works. And that's what we'll try to get done this afternoon. What I'll do is I'll run it on, I have Adamison's muffler on tradition now. I'll run it a couple of flights with Adamison's muffler and switch the mufflers and try it with Tom Lay's muffler and do a comparison at the field under flying conditions. Always works the best. How many times have you taken somebody's word for something? You read in a magazine, this prop works, this muffler, this, that, this reworked motor. You put it in your plane, garbage. Well, it's happened to me many times. I've fallen prey to that old nonsense. Listening to what I read in magazines, boy. No substitute for doing it yourself, believe me when I tell you. And boy, that's the bottom line. All right, we're going to put these props away to dry, pull that muffler off Strega, get into the van, and hopefully get up to the field, get some flying today. Now, while I'm up the club field testing that muffler, I'm going to put these guys out there in the sun. You can see it's a beautiful sunny day. I'm getting the van loaded up now. We're on our way to test. Now I'm up at the club field here to do some testing. You can see what's great. The field finally is, you can see where it's all black. The water's gone now and it's semi-usable. There's my test stand in the back. And I spend a good part of the summer up here testing stuff, and usually I'm at the field alone, so I'll see if I can get anybody, if anybody shows up, obviously. We got some nice dead air to work with. I got that Tom Lay muffler, and I'd like to hopefully get some testing done. Now, if you want to test things, you know, and this gets into a controversial area. If you really want to test something, well, you know, you got to be able to put it to the test. It's like if you want to test motorcycle racing tires, you got to be able to slide the bike and see if they're going to grip or not grip. In this case, I know this setup that's in the plane from last year, this is a typical circle burner setup, a stock 13.6 rev-up prop, Adamison muffler, 315 Venturi, 150-pound head. This setup is very, very good at winning East Coast contests. In fact, this plane probably is one of the top winners of all East Coast contests ever, of all time. Don't know, and it's not important. But what is important now is I want to put this to the test. And there's a lot of bullshit ways of putting things to the test. You can just go fly it all by itself and say, oh, gee, wow, oh, that works great. Oh, my God, up, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, we want to put this really to the test, and usually when I put things to the test, a lot of times I'm disappointed in what I find. I don't know yet because I, obviously don't even have the muffler on the plane yet. But I have my stuff over here. I have my two sets of lines. The air is dead. I'll use the longer of the two sets. I have 70s and I have 67.6. Use the long lines. I want to take the plane and I want to get one baseline flight on the Adamison muffler. If I have the motor 2.4 and real good, and I feel like it's working the way it should, I'll be satisfied with that flight. Then I'm going to come in, take out the Tom Lay muffler over here, bolt it on, and without touching the needle, go back out to the field and take a flight. Now, when you have to go in on the needle valve, to get your motor run back, what that's telling you is that this muffler is more restrictive than the Adamison muffler. That's the way you tell. If you bolt this muffler on, and it's in a dead 2 cycle and you have to back the needle out, then this muffler is more efficient. Now this muffler is a little bit lighter, but I'm not going to be bothered with trying to fine-tune the airplane. What I want to do is see that my motor run stays the way it should, that I still maintain the 2.4, and I can always use the baseline of how the 2-cycle power is. That's the key thing here. A muffler that restricts a lot, if that muffler is a very restrictive muffler, obviously one of the things that's going to happen is it'll be weak overhead, weak in the top of the hourglass. The other thing that tells you, and I have my stopwatch on here, is I'm going to accurately time the flights. And I know very well how this muffler and this setup runs. This is the FAI setup. It runs just under 6 minutes. If that muffler runs 7 minutes, it's less efficient. And when it's running longer, it's trapping more heat in the motor and doing other negative things. So this is a real world test. We're not trying to, you know, jury rig this in any way. I want to come out of this knowing which setup I want to start with when I go to fly Strega. Now, needless to say, when you're doing a test like this, one of the other things that's very important is very consistent fuel, and we won't be switching fuel throughout the test. You want to make sure, of course, if you're checking fuel consumption, a couple of things you want to make sure of. Number one, that you fill the tank. Number two, that when you empty the tank, you fly level, fly low, so the tank empties out. Always a good idea to put the prop on back compression where it just bumps onto compression backwards. This way you don't fill up the venturi. Usually the first start of the day is a little bit oily and greasy and everything, so we won't even bother with that. We just want to get the time from beginning to end. Okay, she's full. Again, a lot of times when you do the real world test, there's no point in just putting this in Strega. Another thing that I'll accomplish today is get a couple of flights under my belt before I fly a new plane. You know, we're really hoping soon I can get either Joe or Jimmy or somebody come down the field with me to fly Strega. But one of the things, a couple of flights today will definitely be a positive thing. Especially if I can get some stunt patterns in this dead air. Again, we'll find out. Again, first flight of the day, it's always full of oil, and I don't want to, hopefully, not over choke it. One of the things, it's important to mention, one of the things I tried last year, I tried never to practice the morning of a contest. And I'll explain what I had in mind. I know that when you go to the World Championships, not the Nats, that's for sure, but you go to the World Championships, you really don't get to practice. You don't get a practice flight 5 minutes before the official flight. So you really have to go in cold. And what I wanted to do is put my own flying skill to the test, and it was a private little thing I was doing. I didn't want to announce it to anybody in case it didn't work. But one of the things that I was trying constantly was not to practice, keep the practice the day before the contest to a bare minimum. The reason for that was I wanted to see if I was going to be real good at or not so good at getting the first flight, going right into the wing over pullout. And that was a personal little challenge I made to myself. Now, what I just proved to myself here is I can get the needle set on the first shot. That was a reasonably good flight. And I can make a change to the plane, a trim change, and go right out and fly the plane and not have to be one of these characters that needs a flight 30 seconds before they go out to fly. And I noticed that at the World Championships, where you couldn't get a practice flight, the Chinese were
just super at walking up to the field and flying the airplane. And it's something I'd like to do if the day ever comes, you know. All right, I'm putting the muffler on now. Try to get this set if I can. One thing nice about this plane, it's so opened up in the front, you can really just about get anything. And I'm trying to use that little gasket so we get a true test of how the motor is breathing. If you leave a loose connection at the exhaust, you don't really get a true reading. Anyway, I might have mentioned this earlier on in a video somewhere. I really wanted to be able to go to a contest and put my first official flight in and be able to get the needle set. And I've been trying to do that all last year, even at the Nats on Walker Day, is not need a practice flight 5 minutes before the official flights. I always felt if I ever make the team to Europe or China or Japan or wherever, I'd like to be able to just go out cold. And it's been a little personal challenge of my own to try to be able to do that. Obviously, we'll find out if I ever have to put it to the test. Okay, we're ready to test this guy. Again, what's funny here is it looked like such a nice day a half an hour ago. And right now, it looks like it's going to rain any minute, so we may only get 1 or 2 flights. But the idea is 1 or 2 flights are still light years ahead of having no flights. And again, even if this muffler is more restrictive than the Adamisen, it'll give me 1 extra chance, 1 extra option, whatever you want to call it, when I trim the plane, do the vertical CG. So any data I can get today is going to be money in the bank. And we hope real soon we'll be getting out to Flushing. That's the real test. The air at Flushing usually puts things right to the test immediately. Things that work good in other places, you get to Flushing, they don't always work. Anyway. The only thing I forgot to bring was the decibel meter. Well, that's not an important part of it, but we do have a decibel meter, and if we see a drastic change in sound, we can measure it. Like it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. Now, my initial impression on the first flight. Initial impression. Needle was just about the same as with the Adamisen muffler, and the Adamisen muffler and the Merco have a kind of a tie for the best. So my feeling is this is definitely a usable muffler, and definitely one that fits within the range when we fly this plane that we'll have from time to time. Now, one of the things that's nice about it, because it's a little bit lighter, the plane, actually right now I should be adding a little nose weight to it. It's overturning by just a little bit or adjusting the handle, but I'm not concerned with patterns at this point in time. It's running roughly the same amount of time. I'm getting the same amount of laps at the end of the pattern, and I'll stopwatch it later on. The sound is, I'd say, a little bit, maybe a decibel or 2 quieter than an Adamisen muffler. But that's basically because the tail cone is 350 and an Adamisen is 375. And that's usually the determining factor in the noise, is the opening at the tail cone. But certainly a usable thing, and I would really be, I'm going to get more of these from Tom Lay, the shorter ones, and experiment with them. This is a special one he made for me that's a little bit longer. Again, I think this is going to be a real good product, something we'd want to have in inventory. I want to get, if I can, get 2, 3, 4 more flights on it. Maybe try to, I could even videotape a flight by myself here, but not really. Maybe Jimmy or somebody will show up, who knows? You never know. Anyway, it's looking like we have a usable product here. And I would never recommend to anybody to do that, to buy something or use it, because everything I sell is money back guarantee, of course. I don't like to recommend things without having done a test like today myself. So far I'm real happy with the way this is working out. For a first day out, this really is, well, working out better than a lot of things do on the first day. Anyway, what I want to do, what's happening here is we're losing the weather. It looks like it's going to rain any minute now, in fact. So before the day is over, I'd like to try to get one flight on video so I can go back home and analyze it, take a look at it, record lap times, record maneuver speed times, whatever I want to do with it, make myself crazy. But this certainly, you know, we're not going to be able to get a really good quality flight in here because the air is shifting and moving all over the place. But I'll try to set the camera up far enough away that we can get, well, whatever. You can hear the motor run, and that's really the critical thing. If you have a muffler and it doesn't have a motor run, well, it isn't really good. It isn't good at all, in fact. Anyway, I'll take a minute here right on my own video to just thank Tom Lay for a good product. I think this is a usable product for sure. And when I get the next one, I'll try to open up the tail cone maybe one drill size, see if that makes any increase in performance without noise. Again, this is a special one with a 6-inch tube. The anodizing's already burning off of it, so we're going to get George to strip the anodizing off of it and polish it up. It looks real nice, though. It has the look of fuel dragster or whatever. Anyway, let me see if I can get that camera in position. Maybe we can get one flight before we get the raindrops hitting us. Again, I'm here alone and I'm just trying to set up an angle. The wind is so swirly here today, or the little breeze that there is. I'll try to, well, just see if I can get anything of value with this.
That's definitely going to be the end of the day here. I don't want to get caught out here in the rain. I don't have enough time to know when to leave. Also, it looks like you're getting static in the air. Starting to get those little zips in the lines on overhead maneuvers. Anyway, it was a good testing day. I hope you didn't mind sharing it with us. We get back to the shop tonight or tomorrow, work on our props, work on Strega. Now here in packing up today, I put the old Adamson muffler back in here, and it's really soaked with oil. Maybe we'll have a time later on here to get this all polished up. If anybody out there, and this is the reason I'm putting this on video, if anybody out there has some magic formula for getting that caked oil off, other than sandblasting or just polishing it off, let me know and I'll pass it on. This is usually a labor-intensive job to get this cleaned up again. But it's been a good session. And it's really sessions like this that make the difference between bullshit and the real world. Anybody that's ever been a drag racer, a road racer, or anything knows the value of real world testing. And I sure do. All right, see you back to house. Okay, the only negative thing that happened in the whole test session here, the only thing I want to mention on the video, the little gasket that we had between the muffler and the motor, did not last. It lasted the day, and at the end of the day it was already leaking, so I'm going to abandon gaskets. And needless to say, I just want that information to be on a tape. That's something that hasn't worked out. Now we have a real day of flying on this. I even have the video of it flying so I can evaluate that later. But one of the things I want to do, I want to bring this to the stunt form and show it off for Tom, maybe generate him some orders, who knows, or generate something, a drug deal anyway. Well, for sure, you can see that the anodizing on this did not last. In fact, my experience with anodizing mufflers is it never lasts. It does not stand the test of time. So I'm going to go over to George's shop. George and I are going to wander over there. Now, of course, George, having an anodizing business, has a tank that he can strip this. And I've never seen anodizing stripped, but I'm willing to learn. So we're going to go over to George's shop. And obviously, if you buy a Tom Lay muffler and you're not happy with the anodizing, you can always, you know, send it to Wendy and he can strip the anodizing for one low price, a pizza. Okay, no problem. But just be aware, none of my anodizing withstood the test of time either. So nothing gained, nothing lost. I don't know if you can see this. This is across the street from George's business. It's my own private flying field that I can't even use. Thank God I can't use it. Here's the reason. It's a toxic waste site. Anyway, this is George's anodizing business. We're going to run in and strip that muffler, baby. Aluminum anodizing.
Hey there.
Okay.
We're from the EPA. We're going to shut this damn place down. Going to do a drug raid. Probably everybody here's on drugs. Yeah, just strip the damn thing. It's a caustic solution that strips that right off. Oh, nice. Say goodbye, nice muffler.
Actually,
Goodbye, nice anodizing.
we just start to gas and stuff.
Boy, that really takes it right off, huh? Holy mackerel.
Well, it's starting to work on the aluminum that's not anodized first.
What kind of solution you got that can take oil off aluminum? Anything?
Well, this will take.
There's probably some oil on there.
This will remove pretty much most of the oil.
What happens if you fall into that tank? Bad news, huh?
You'd be a little irritated. It's hot.
That's what the smoke
I
you
can
see coming off
I can put my finger in and it doesn't do anything, but if you have a cut or...
Yeah, right.
this removes.
But nothing takes that oil
Here's
off. Well, I'm going to polish it anyway. No,
yeah,
just,
but no, I'm saying that's the oil from the
from
blow
the
fuel.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I'll polish that sucker right up tonight.
See where the oil is?
Yeah, where the oil? Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to take the anodizing off. I should have done it before I ran the engine.
It's really the only way to do it.
Yeah, I should have took it off before I ran it. That's a good tip. Don't run it if you want to strip the anodizing. So how's business? Pretty decent these days, or going down the toilet?
Slow, and now we're picking up again.
Yeah. The original owner of aluminum anodizing, George the Bear for Tipton up here. Nice hat, George. This really is a true story. This used to be Arsenco. They used to make rocket fuel here. And there was a chance, I thought, we could use it for a fly-in site, private fly-in site. But you can see what they've done. They took down, the building is gone. They knocked the building down. They took all the soil away, and it's just as always is around here. Everything is toxic, and you could die just breathing the air here. Now we got back from George's anodizing business there. You can see they stripped that anodizing right off. Now what I'm doing, I'm taking, this is 500 wet and dry. Just getting out some of the little tooling marks. Get whatever little bit of oil is still left on here. Then I'll finish it up with 1200, then go over to the buffing wheel and buff it. Now, a couple of tips here. These are things common polishing practice. You have to, the first thing you have to do is get out all the machine scratches. And I used some 400 and 500 to do that. That was done. I also used a block so I wouldn't give me a rippled surface. Also, there was little spots on here where the oil stuck to the anodizing and the anodizing didn't come off. And because anodizing is an extremely hard surface, it was a bitch getting it off. So the point to be made is if you decide you want a polished muffler, polish it before you run the engine. You'll save yourself a lot of work. Also, just like aluminum landing gear, if you want to polish aluminum landing gear, you want to first do it with 1200 paper, get it all nice and radius down. The next thing you want to do, and this is SOS, soap, Brillo, whatever you want to call it, this gets out all the sanding scratches, and we'll go over to the polishing wheel and polish this up. It'll look like a dragster header when we're done with it. Let's hope. Anyway, just some thoughts you might want to have, you might want to use. You want to polish spinners, landing gear, mufflers. And again, this is just common polishing machine shop practice. And it's very labor intensive. So if you pay somebody to polish this, if you go to a machine shop or you send it to somebody to polish, be prepared to pay a few shekels because it's labor intensive. Especially if you want a really nice job with all the corners radiused and everything. Talking about a lot of time. Now while I'm doing all this sloppy stuff, I'm going to try to get most of that oil off the atomicin muffler too, so I can put that back on the plane and hope we don't have to do that again for a while. That oil, getting that oil off is, oh man, is it a thrill. Now while I was doing that, George took and scraped off a lot of the extra oil, and I guess a sharp X-Acto gets a lot of it off, but I think the rest of it we're going to have to get off with Brillo or sandpaper. Yeah, you can get quite a bit of it off this way, but then it's going to have to be, well, either way we're going to have to repolish it, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. Same routine as for the Tom Lay muffler. And I guess if you do this a couple times a season, you don't wind up with the thing so cruddy. I just didn't do this for a whole season. Oop, I don't know if you can see. just how long it takes to get a lot of this stuff off. Looks like the light stuff comes off real quick, but boy, the heavy stuff is murder. I'm sure somebody out there in Stuntland is going to call me up within the next, as soon as they get a copy of this video, and say, oh, you use this magic solution of, you know, this and that, dip it in, and it comes out polished like chrome plating. But I'm not holding my breath, that's for sure. Now, of course, the final shine we'll get on here with polishing wheel. This is red rouge. Red, black, or white rouge will all work well on this. Looks like this is nice aluminum. It's polishing up real nice. Again, if you want all the corners and angles, it just takes time. You just have to be prepared to spend a little time. Now, of course, up around the header part, there's a lot of curves and angles. Put a little extra wax on the wheel here. A little wax. It looks like the red rouge is cutting the nicest. But again, I'll spend, you know, a half hour, 45 minutes detailing this out, trying to get it as nice as possible. And I had very few mufflers don't leak a little oil from time to time, so when it's polished, you can just take it off and repolish it. If it's anodized, you really can't get the oil off reasonably. It's kind of a pain in the ass. Now, one last final thing is just clean off all the rouge, all the wax and rouge off. And here's a good tip. Don't forget, anytime you polish anything, clean that pressure fitting out. I've done that already. Got into the field, motor wouldn't run, been cleaning filters and everything, never realized I had filled that up with rouge and wax. Alright, the Adam Eason guy came out nice. Tom Lay's muffler looks great. I'm going to put it back on a plane and look forward to getting some more flying on this guy. Hope we'll, obviously it's a little lighter now too, but hope we'll get some flying on him. Maybe this weekend, who knows? Weather report is good. Flying season is about to start. Yeah, it came out. I didn't bother too much time on that old Adam Eason thing. There you go, put that on a plane and I'm ready to go do another day of testing. Back on the plane, and I think it looks a whole lot nicer. Really nice. Okay, tomorrow should be a flyable day. Don't know if we're going to go flying, but we'll continue the test program. How's Big Tsunami coming over there? Good? Getting ready to put the canopy on?
Trying. I was trying.
Keep hammering away, baby. Just keep hammering away. Now I want to buff out. I still have the hubcaps. Let's call them baby moon hubcaps. And of course it's acrylic lacquer. I just take some Gorhams, buff it out the same day. Don't even wait. Don't fool around. 1, 2, 3. It's buffed out. The little bit of extra weight that the acrylic adds is meaningless here. Let's see if we can get that on. Take my word for it, it does have a good shine. Now, because my little covers here are just a little bit bigger than the hubs that they're going over, I'd like to get them on center, needless to say.
I'm trying to make myself a little fixture for centering this. That should hold it centered while the CA dries, hopefully. Just get a tight fit on all the pins here, and that should be a help centering it out. Now that I've said that, for sure it's going to go in nice and crooked. Again, all this little detail work, to me, I won't speak for anybody but myself, to me it really does pay off. Put the kicker right on the other painted surface. Before you press it down, see if it's in kind of straight. I'm kind of happy with the way this worked out with the little covers. Again, just one of the little details. Now George got the canopy on today. Everything's gluing up. We just made a little mock-up of the spinner here. And we're going to let this sit over the weekend. Come back Monday and do the detail sanding out. Hey, this is a good tip for you. If you have extra camera batteries, which is one of my video cameras, don't put them in your pocket. I put this in my pocket and I had keys in my pocket. The key shorted out the battery got hot in my pocket, like to give me a hot foot or a hot ass or whatever. Not exciting. Ruined one of my good batteries. I'll have to have Jimmy check that out. Now I'm taking some of the props, you know, as I said before in a video, that were proven to work well at certain fields, and this happens to be the Friday Nats prop that was working real well in the wind. And it worked good at the circle burner field. So these are the proven props that have a little bit increase in pitch or decrease, whatever. This one is the undercambered prop. And I want to paint these up. Again, this is just fluff painting them, really, but it's one of the little details. When you want to paint a prop that has year-old lacquer, you really should hit it with M600 and some 1200 sandpaper to get a little tooth in a paint, especially on a prop, and carefully radius the edges, even though you'll probably break through just a little bit on the edges. This will give the paint a little bit of a better tooth, a better bite, whatever you want to call it. And then I'm going to mask these off so I can put some stripes or fancy them up. And of course you can do that to custom match whatever plane it is that you're making these for. Most of my planes are red, so red, white, black, yellow, whatever. And of course if you want to be a crazy man, you can make up one really custom special prop that you're only going to use at appearance judging, which a lot of people seem to think is a cool idea. Of course, it's even cooler if you can use the appearance point, the appearance prop, and everybody thinks, oh, tomorrow when he gets out to the field he'll have a wood prop on there. Not really, and you can use that prop that has all the fancy paintwork on it. Anyway, just some thoughts. Anyway, today we wanted to get up to the club field later today. We're supposed to meet some people up there. I don't know if they're going to show because it looks like it's kind of a lousy day. Looks like the wind is blowing and it's a lot colder than it was yesterday. After it rained, got chilly as could be. Anyway, we'll mask these off and get some of the fancy paint work on them and then run up to the field and see what's going on up there. Now, just like we do with painting the airframe itself, run the tape on your flannel shirt or your t-shirt a few times, because this paint is only a day old and we don't want to pull the paint up off the prop. This is a good way to do it. Now what I try to do is use the tape itself as, and this gets to both blades equal, or close to equal. Use that for your spacer. And you can lay this one on here.
And when you do the other blade, in theory, you should have the same amount, either the thickness of tape, or if you wanted to, you could cut a little more, a wider piece of tape. 3/4 of an inch seems to be about right for this. Anyway, you can kind of create your own little custom prop painting thing by doing it that way. By the way, this screwdriver deal, I don't know how many people do it this way. Just pressing a screwdriver into the back of the hub is a good way to hold the prop while you're doing any painting or whatever, sanding, whatever on it. What I'm trying to do is make each one just a little bit different. Now there's a method to my madness. You can see the prop stripes in any videotape, and what it'll allow me to do is go back when I'm changing props at the field constantly and shooting video. What I can do is go back, and just by looking at the stripe pattern on the video, I'll know what prop was on the plane on that day. Is that scientific or what? I mean, come on. Anyway, I like the way it looks too. That's the real reason. Now you get the idea. What I do is just I work my way down with the stripes down toward the hub with each color, and of course I want to make each one maybe a little different, just for a little diversity. Today what I want to do, we had a blowout of a flying session. Wind was just unflyable up at the field, so I decided to call that session off. I want to work on these props a little bit today. Get the letrasets on, maybe get the clear on. Now, believe it or not, if you want to letraset up a prop, you're going to run into a problem that I ran into, is trying to get it balanced and in the center, unless you have exactly letters that are perfectly equal and everything. So what I try to do is divide the prop up right in half with a piece of tape. Then from that point on, lay out 2 little strips of tape where I'd like to have the lettering. Because the lettering is a little bit thicker than the prop, it usually works out reasonably anyway. Again, laying out the lettering on a prop, what will happen is the first couple times you do it, if you decide this is one of the things you want to do, it's crooked, it's off to one side, it's very hard to balance the lettering and get it, at least for my taste, to get it to look the way you want. Now, if you watch and just take that middle tape out, now you have 2 equally spaced, but they're not in alignment. One is off this way, one is off this way, and you can lay out whatever it is, whether it's a thanks Debbie, thanks Peggy, thanks Santa Claus, Big Jim, Tom Lay, whatever you want to put on there is fine. Now, what I'm doing, I'm trying to do some of the lettering in gold, some in black. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'm just going to fiddle around here till I get something that I like. Again, I want, the object here is I want all the props to be just a little different for identification purposes. And also I think it just adds one of those little quality touches that when you look at 10 planes in the front row and they're all nice, they're all buffed, and one has something a little special, this might be one of the things that makes it a little special. You don't know. It seems like everybody's picked up on this already. And we absolutely will be flying with these props too. That's one of the other things. A lot of people have this real pretty prop. The next day you go to the field and there's the old slimy thing back on a plane. I'm going to definitely be flying with these props, I hope, all season. So I'm going to lay out some of the letrasets and try to get the clear on. I guess it's a good day to spray clear. It looks like it's decent anyway. Yeah, you just get an idea of what I've been doing with the props here, and I'm going to put a little more work into them, touch them up a little bit, and I'll be ready to spray to clear outside. And it looks like it'll be a good day to spray it.
Now, it's a little cool out here today, so I made the paint just a little bit thinner than I normally would. Always try to get a little extra on the edge, and maybe just a little bit extra on the electrosets too. Now, the nice thing is, it is nice enough out here. We'll leave everything out here to dry when we take care of the other business of the day, mail and whatever. Again, because this is acrylic, we'll be able to buff it out either later today or tomorrow, really quickly anyway. And if you're going to put, we're going to probably put 2 or 3 coats on. Give it an hour or so in between coats and double coat the edges. Go right into wet sand in it with 1200 and Gorham's. Again, I'll get the rest of these done off camera. Got a couple other little projects I want to work on today, and knowing that this is out here drying, give it an hour to dry and I'll come out and give it a second coat, maybe even a third coat. I don't know if it's going to need it or not. 2 coats at a minimum though, that's for sure.
George just came over with this mock-up of the painting that's going in the train room. This is the beginning of, needless to say, George is the Michelangelo of stunt here, or whatever the hell he is. And I got all the clear on these props. I hope I'm going to be able to just let them sit for a while. Maybe by this afternoon I'll be ready to buff them out anyway. I made up a couple last night. I had some extra time. I got a couple extra ones made. I want to do some electrosets on them and whatnot later. Again, that's all redundant. Here's the good news that we got. We got the motor from Jim. In fact, we got 2 motors from Jim. One of these was, and as always, Jim includes a little note telling me that I'm an idiot and that I don't know what I'm doing and that Polish guys aren't as intelligent as black guys. You know the whole racial thing. Anyway, got to put up with him because he's the best there is, period. And because I love him, too. Anyway, one of these motors was one, and I just mentioned this real quick, one of these Mike Haravich graciously found. This is the one here. This is an oldie but a goodie. One of these is a K. It's a new one. This is the new one. This is the old Tsunami one. It had a stripped head bolt. We took care of that. So we got 2 new motors. What I'm going to do, I had put the plane together before just to get a preliminary balance, and I was fooling with the other muffler, and what I want to do is put the real tank, the real hardware in the nose of the plane and get it ready, so when Mike comes over here, he can get it bench trimmed for me.
Now here's something maybe some of the people out there really don't do, or they don't do religiously. I'm finished with this tank now for the year, or it's going to be a backup tank. So what I'm going to do is fill it with fuel, or at least, the worst, fill it half with fuel. Never store a tank empty. They rust, they corrode, whatever. If you fill a tank with fuel, you know when you go to use it, or if you use it, in this case, this will be a backup of a backup tank. Okay. Filled with fuel, now I can put it away. Confidently, yeah. I have 2 tanks from Jim, 2 brand new ones that I want to test. And this one has been in a plane already. I know the shim and everything. just get as much cleaned out of there as possible. Now I'll put 3 caps on here and put this away. In fact, I got some tubing right here. And put this away. But never store the tank just empty, or especially if you're going to store it in a cellar, put it away with some kind of a little cap on the end of it. That's ready to store away now. That'll be a backup. That'll be my second backup tank. I have the note on for the shim and what tank it is. Now these are the new tanks that I just got from Jim. Needless to say, where the hell's my tubing? First thing I want to do is flush them out with some fuel. Now a lot of people get a tank. Uh-oh, I smell cigar ashes. There was only one time in my whole life I got something bad from Jim. I opened up a gas tank and there was cigar ashes in it. Just kidding, Jim. Anyway, I put a little fuel in there. This is an important step. This will save you some time when we go to bench trim the plane or whatever. Just get a little bit of fuel, maybe 2-3 ounces in it. Shake it up real good. Nothing special here. Then we're going to just drain it out. I do this 3 or 4 times. I got 2 tanks, so I want to do them both. Won't tie up a lot of tape with this, but cleaning the tank out, just make a milkshake for a half an hour, 45 minutes. Whatever time you spend cleaning these tanks now, you can be sure the first day you get to the field, of course when a tank is new you want to use a filter for the first maybe 20 flights or so until it starts running clean. Then usually you'll get 4, 5, 6 seasons out of a tank before it starts to corrode or whatever. Anyway, this is one of the steps a lot of people leave out. And I've seen Jeff Stifle is the most obvious one. Used to take a tank, put it right in a plane, go fly, and then be cleaning the filter, turning the plane on its back. It was almost like having a pipe plane. The thing was on its back half of the time we were at Bradley's. Because he didn't want to spend an hour or 2 in the shop. Now, even though, you know, we're itching to fly this plane, but the first thing is I want to get to the field. I don't want a lot of problems the first day. I don't want this plane on its back half of the day. So I'm hoping I can start with at least having some of these things out of the way. Now what I want to do, I want to take a paper towel here, put the towel in the garbage can, and see what's coming out of here. Now sometimes you will get some corrosion or some rust or whatever. Believe it or not, that looks clean. Maybe Jim's doing these clean anyway. No cigar ashes. Okay. I'll do the other one off camera. I'll do that 3 or 4 times until I'm absolutely sure that what's coming out, there's no little whatever, soldering flux or whatever. Now I also want to take all of the tube ends. Let me get a little piece of sandpaper here. Take some 400 sandpaper and burnish these tube ends. Now 2 things I want to do to the vents. I want to get some circular grooves in there with some, maybe some 320 or 220, but I want to make sure there's no burr at all. Perfectly clean. I don't want that to be putting little pinholes in the tubing. Again, all these are little detail things. So when we go out, and if we get a decent day before we get to the field, I'll even try to bench run this motor. Jim's suggesting this new motor, one of the motors there, not the Tsunami one, the new one. In his note he said it had a tight crankshaft fit. It should be run on the ground for a while, so I'd like to get it run in the plane, and this way I can be shaking and vibrating the tank and loosening up anything else that's in there that's getting ready to come out. Now it's also, I've done in the past, is take a tank like this, put it on a test stand, and break in the motor at the same time as you do the tank. Break the tank in and the motor. That's pretty good. Again, this is all detail stuff. The whole object of everything here is so that the first day we get to the field, we don't have the plane on its back half of the day, or we can get the most, well, we don't have a flying day today, we're just wasting a rainy day. But we don't want to waste that first nice day of the year, or first decent day, or day that, you know, for us to go to Flushing, it's $10 in tolls. I hate to go $10 in tolls and then have the plane on its back all day. You know, let's save that for the tuned pipe guys. Anyway, I'll do this, I'll clean this a few more times, we'll be ready to put this back in the plane. Now one of the things before I put the motor in the plane is I always get the ratchet adjusted just about right. I like to take a parting tool and put like a clock hand on the needle and then paint that. Of course, here's one that's painted since I'm setting up two motors here. This I feel like, with my eyesight anyway, when I go in and let's say this is here and I know the first flight was a little bit rich or lean, I want to go one click, I want to know click. I don't want it to go click, 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 click. And adjusting the ratchet is just one of the things that I'd rather do before it goes into the plane. Jim usually puts a drop or two of epoxy around a needle, so getting that ratchet, the fine tuning of the ratchet, is one of the things I like to do before I get it into the plane. Again, I just like to take just a little bit of orange Sig paint and just leave it right in the groove. Now for me, or if you don't have great eyes, I think that's a nice little tip. Again, this is one of those adjustments, and I just really fine-tune this just by spreading it just a little bit. I want it to go one click at a time. If it's too tight, it'll go two or three. Still too tight. It'll go 2 or 3 clicks at a time. If you loosen it too much, you got to take the needle out and pinch it back a little bit. It's just, I can look at the ratchet here and see that it's going one click at a time. Now you might be thinking, well, why not just use a Super Tiger needle, that type of needle? The vibration is much less. First of all, I've had many planes, and I know Jim has too, where they had all kind of motor run problems, and as soon as you switch to a max needle, you're out of the resonant range. So my suggestion is always, no matter what motor you use, even pipe motors, an OS max needle is always my first choice. Of course, it seems to resonate out of the range that we use. Now usually we run a needle about 3 turns out, and at 3 turns out I want it to just be just a little bit looser. Again, it's a real fine adjustment. It's something, it's just another one of the details. You get to the field the first day and the needle's too tight or too loose or rolling out or flipping out or who the hell knows what. It's really a pain. Okay. Now this is another little tip I like to do. I take some 600 wet and dry paper and a little bit of oil or Windex or something, and just get that cover over there. Just dress off the exhaust opening. You don't want to take a lot of material off. You just want to make it nice and smooth. Hold it on the glass flat. I think you get a little bit of fit, a little bit better fit to the muffler then. Again, you don't want to take a lot of material off. Just kiss it off till it's nice and smooth. You sure don't want any of that to get down into the motor, so wipe it off real clean. And of course you want to get a nice fit onto the muffler. I'll do the same thing with the muffler, and even though we don't know which muffler is going to be the final muffler here, dressing it off when we clean it up or polishing it is always a good idea. Again, I didn't have luck with that little tower gasket. Keep in mind, that little tower gasket self-destructed, so maybe that's not going to be a practical thing, even though I like the idea of it. One of the downsides of having a gasket there, it doesn't absorb as much heat out of the motor, so maybe it's a good thing it didn't work. And we'll just let this leak a little oil, but we'll be using it to pull more heat out of the motor. The gasket acts as an insulator, so, and as always, you know, we'll try it. We tried it with the gasket, it didn't work, so now we're down to having this. Now those surfaces are pretty decent now. They have a reasonably good fit. It should leak very little oil out of there. Now I don't know if I've mentioned this before. This is the red tubing. This is the only tubing I recommend anybody use. After years and years of fooling with other brands, I guess the blue stuff, the clear stuff, this has proven to me to, at least in my case, the most durable and the most prone not to develop a little pinhole or whatever.
Again, another one of the little details that'll just, when you get to the field, you don't have a miserable day trying to figure out why the motor's going lean halfway through a flight. Oh, there's a pinhole in this, a pinhole in that, or who the hell knows. Red tubing. I don't even know if this is Brewline or not. I got this from Craig Gunder. Again, when we go out to run this, bench run it, the other motor needs to be broken in. This is not a new motor. This is one that Jim fixed some strip bolts on. Again, I have the holes opened up enough that I can vary the offset a little bit. Something I always want to be able to do. I'll start with a 1/4 inch of offset when I measure it from the outboard prop blade to the inboard prop blade, a difference of a 1/4 inch on a 13-inch prop. That usually is where it winds up, a little more or a little less, but it almost never winds up more than that or at 0 unless the plane has some other trim characteristic that's incorrect. Now, when I built the plane, I built the back plate, the spinner back plate here, and this to be at that angle. Usually I'd build it at 0 and then it looks funny, so just by looking at this I can see I have just about the right amount. Now, one of the other good tips, and I guess this applies to all planes, every year in the beginning of the season, before I get into a season of flying, I replace all the neoprene, all the tubing, replace the cable in the handle, and if you're running a filter, just replace it even if it looks real clean. The reason is, the little copper screen that's in these filters from fuel gets corroded and it gets clogged up, and that's why we don't like to run a fuel filter. If you do run a fuel filter, take the little copper guy out, brass, whatever you want to call it. That will in time cause you a problem. It always seems like the motor runs a little bit stronger of a 2.4 with the filter out, but we do have a filter in because it's a new tank, and we do want to get some runs on it and see that we don't have some who knows what volcanic ash in there, whatever, pizza dust. Now, each motor, of course, is a little shorter or longer based on how tight this nose cone's been. So I have my back plate. I have two choices. I can put the back plate on the flat way, and you can see it rubs. Second choice, I have knurls on the back of the back plate, and that keeps it out just enough. But if I needed a little more clearance, what I would want to have is one of these little sandpaper washers. And the best material to make these from is a sanding belt, a Sears Roebuck sanding belt, or I guess any tool maker. Now, I don't need it with this motor, but I always keep a few of these in a toolbox just in case. And these would be just to final tune the distance between the spinner and the front of the airplane. Now, before I put this guy away, and he'll pretty much be ready to do the, let's hope, the bench trimming, or if we get some decent weather, we could run outside and ground run them a few times. Now, what's nice is starting with a motor, and this is a motor we know from last year was a good motor. Starting with a motor that's already broken in eliminates one hassle in the beginning of the plane. Starting with a new tank, again, that's a little bit of a hassle. I wish we had a tank that was all set up and shimmed and we'd know exactly where it would go, but this is all pretty much ordinary stuff. We're going to start with a full-size 13.6 rev up. I'll buff these props out, get them all set, get one of the batch props that I made for this plane on here. Again, a little 1200 in Gorham's, and they look great. Now, needless to say, when the props have the final coat of clear and some 1200 sandpaper, and a quick shot with the Gorham's, you're only talking about maybe 5 minutes a prop. And then a final balancing. And what's a good idea is after you fly these a few times, double check them in case you take a nick or a chip out. That looks like it'll be fine. Take a little feel like a drunk. A little chip out of the prop. You don't want to run it that way. You want to get it rebalanced.